Hello guys, welcome back to my newest Let's Play. Um, Another Let's Play with Hearts of Iron 3, their finest hour. And for this Let's Play I chose to play with Nationalist China. Nationalist China is a very interesting country to play with, uh, but it has several, I would say, um, very big problems to solve early on. So this is probably not a very good starting place for players new to this game. But I decided to do this let's play like a sort of tutorial. I will try to talk about all possible strategies to play National China. Although I already chose mine, there are several possibilities that you can play National China. So I'll do my best to explain those strategies. In fact, my very first attempt to play with National China. I always wanted to play with it, but this is actually my first time. But I already fired the game, of course. I had a look at National China and chose my strategy. I'm also going to play it at very hard. You may wonder why. The answer is quite simple, because Nationalist China is, in my opinion, a very strong country. In my opinion, is a major power in disguise. So, to keep things interesting for me, I'm going to play at very hard. But before I proceed with this, I'd like to call it a tutorial. I would like to talk about a fellow Let's Player. He's a very nice guy. He did something for me that I was not that he didn't had to do in his one of his Let's Plays. But that's not why I'm talking about him here. I'm talking about him here because he is a very good YouTuber. He has very good Let's Plays. He is currently playing at least 3. One of them is very interesting for new players. He's teaching the basics about this game, but he's doing it in a very interesting way, a very pragmatic way, that will get that will facilitate, that will how can I say it, sorry about my English, sometimes I have lots of problems in expressing myself. What I'm trying to say is that he has a very good technique for teaching new players how to play the game. So thank you, Alex, for your great Let's Plays. And he is very spirited also. So for all reasons, you must see his Let's Plays. So like I was saying, I'm going to play with National China, but I really don't think National China is a very good starting place for new players, because it will have to deal with lots of problems before it even thinks about becoming a major power. One of those problems is dealing with the early war against Japan. But before I talk more about the strategy and the problems of National China, I'm actually starting the game. I'll be playing, of course, in the Road to War scenario. So let's start. Well, National China has a very has very huge problems. The biggest problem, in my opinion, is its infrastructure. As you can see, it's absolutely terrible. It's very hard to supply an army with infrastructure like this. Level 3 infrastructure, level 5 infrastructure. I believe that only very few provinces have level 7 infrastructure. Most of them are simply terrible. No, and infrastructure is very important for a few reasons, but the most important one, in my opinion, is supply, especially at very hard. As you can see, in a level 4 province at very hard, this infrastructure can only supply the troops with 76.8 supplies. But I am getting ahead of myself. This is one of the major problems that National China has, and that we will have to resolve much later in the game. For now, we are very worried with the war with Japan. We have about 1 year and a half to prepare for that, and we are in a very poor shape. Our army is probably half of them is militia, the other half is of level 1 infantry. Our leaders are also poorly skilled. The infantry, as most of them are also very poorly skilled. Militia also level 1, and none of them are reserves. They're all like I was saying, none of them are reserves, so this taxes our consumer goods. As we can see, at this difficulty level, National China, look at what's left of the IC. We have 13 IC, that's barely enough for consumer goods, so we have to choose if we are going to supply our troops or I don't call this supplying our troops. This is as you can see, National China has a lot of problems. If you play at normal, you will have a bit more of IC, but that's nothing. You'll still be in a lot of trouble. Since this tutorial, this let's play, it's not scripted, I'm talking first about the problems, the ones that I consider much more important. So I've talked about infrastructure, I talked about the poor army, all of regulars, none in reserve. Because they are regulars, they tax our IC very much. As you can see, 176%, almost 177% of our IC we'll have to go to consumer goods. I don't know how we are going to do this. We need more IC than what we have according to the game, but we have other problems also. We have a technological problem. National China starts with decent infantry techs, but as you can see, and decent artillery and anti-tank techs, but as you can see, no armor. The light cruisers and destroyers are all pre-1918. No capital ships whatsoever. The bombers are very rudimentary. Also the fighters, all of them pre-1936, all biplanes. The industry is pathetic. Agriculture, as you can see, all pre-1918. Lots of problems with research, with technologies. Everything, National China practical almost starts with almost no techs, with the exception, like I said, of the infantry and of the artillery tech tree, and having the destroyer and light cruiser, bomber and fighters unlocked. The rest is pretty desolating. It's pretty bad. And our leadership is at a decent level, but nothing special, especially because our officer ratio is absolutely dreadful. So most of this leadership will have to go into officers if you want to have a decent army and a decent officer ratio to deal with the war that will be coming very, very soon. We have another problem here with national unity. All countries that start below 80 of national unity we'll have to increase it to be able to implement all the better laws. Without at least national unity of 80, there you won't be able to implement all the best laws available. So let's talk a bit about strategy. What can a player do if playing with National China? Well, let's look at the type of government. The type of government is obviously is fascist, paternal autocrat. Let's look at the alignment of National China also. So National China is very close to the axis. If you choose, you can align to the axis and eventually join the axis. If you defeat Japan before Japan joins the axis, it's doable because you align faster to the axis because you have your type of government allows that. But let's not forget that one of our neighbors is in fact will be when we deal with Japan's puppets, will be Soviet Union. So we have a huge beast, sorry about the word, giant on our doorstep. So we might not want to anger the Soviets, at least not for a while. So that's also a very valid option to align to the Soviet Union and eventually join that faction. I actually advise to do that, at least to align to the Soviet Union, for two reasons. The first one, it's because there's no point trying. In my opinion, it's a bit of it's doable, but if the war drags for a while, Japan will join the Axis, and if you don't manage to align to the Axis quickly, Germany won't accept you in the Axis because you are technically at war with them. So that leaves you three options actually. You either align to the Allies or to the Soviet Union, or you remain neutral. My course of action, my preferred strategy will be to align to the Soviet Union but remain neutral. You also can align to the Allies, but if you do so, let's have a look. If you align to the Allies, after you deal with Japan, where will you expand? You will not be strong enough to defy the Soviet Union, so forget about Soviet Union for many years to come. So let's have a look around the map. You can only attack and incorporate territories that belong to the Allies. So aligning to the Allies, it's doable, but I don't see many advantages in doing that, unless you want to go historical and help the Allies. So you can do it, but be prepared for eventual problems, especially with Soviet Union, if you don't join the Allies soon. You have a fourth option, to remain neutral. That's the option that I'm going to take, because that will allow you to expand. And let's face it, unless you play historical, a game is only, in my opinion, is only fun if you have plans to expand. So a neutral nationalist China, after taking out Japan, can thinking of attack to take India for itself, attack Australia, attack in short, what Japan's main role is, National China can also do it, because after conquering Japan, National China will be able to solve most of its problems, and probably in a couple of years or less will be major power, probably unstoppable. But we have to start somewhere. So I already told you what my course of action, my preferred course of action for National China is indeed to remain neutral and leave it after defeating Japan, taking National China leaving National China in a position of being a major power, a global power, a power that can do whatever it pleases, even going in conquering spree, even conquering the world, if the player wants to do that. So let's start solving the problems that we have. Our biggest problem right now, it's the IC. because we don't have IC to supply all these troops, as you can see. Okay, this is playing at very hard. In normal you have a bit more IC, 25 more percent. You'll have you won't have the 25% handicap of very hard difficulty, but having said that, you still don't have many IC, don't have IC to do what needs to be done to defeat Japan quickly. So what I'm going to do is pretty much what I did in the Finnish Let's Play. I'm going to disband all these regulars. So I'm going to disband all these units. I'm also going to fire the prepare for the decision. These I'm sorry. These will reduce our neutrality. That's currently at 80%. The intelligence screen will also be very important for National China. Spies have a very important role in their finest hour. They also had in the previous expansions of this game, but I believe spies are even more important in this version of the game. So I'm going to the intelligence screen, and our domestic spies will be raising national unity and also trying to kill enemy spies, pretty much like I did with the Finnish Let's Play. But we will have to raise threat in two different countries. I'm going to raise threat in Communist China, because I want to go to war as soon as possible. Raising threats in Communist China will lower our neutrality, but saying it in the better, I'm sorry, sometimes I have a hard time to express myself in English, like I said before. But above all, raising threat in Communist China will increase, obviously, the threat of Communist China towards National China. That will allow us to declare war on Communist China ahead of almost all nations. Communist China will be able to declare war to them. Communist China also has a very low counter spying, so our spies will be pretty safe from their attacks. So I'm going to raise threat, but raising threat in Communist China, unless I'm severely mistaken, won't decrease our neutrality that much. So the country that will target for the to lower neutrality will be, by increasing threats, will be United Kingdom. I'm tempted to assign one to counter spying, but I won't do that because I want to reach zero neutrality as soon as possible. But like in the Finnish Let's Play, I will only assign spies to these countries when I have enough spies there, because sending one out of a time makes them easy prey. So I will wait to have 10 to send them in turn to each of their targets. I will also be trying to steal technology from France. I won't bother to do that with Germany, nor Italy, nor Japan, nor Soviet, with anyone else. Reason is because Germany is very good at killing spies. Italy doesn't have that many techs. Japan is also very good at killing our spies. Not talking about Soviet Union. Soviet Union is also very good at doing that. And the USA, for a democracy, I tell you, spies don't last long there. So since our leadership is very limited, and we need to focus all our research, our leadership in officers and very focused research. That's why I won't bother to try to steal technologies from these countries, at least for now, because that will tax our leadership a lot. So let's see our starting ministers. I might as well leave this guy here. The other is also not very good. This guy is actually very bad. He's stealing us 3% of IC, but this guy will increase descent by 1%. That will also waste our IC, but not as much as this guy, and will give us the benefit of killing enemy spies more easily or with less difficulty, whatever you prefer. I'm going to change this guy also to reduce consumer goods. So this guy is aligning us to the axis. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to change for this one. As you can see, we have a very good head of government and a head of state. They both give us, one of them give us organization regain rate plus 5%. This is good, especially in low infra places where organization takes much longer to regain. The lower the infrastructure, the harder it is for the brigades to regain organization. And Chiang Kai-shek gives us all our land units plus 5% organization. So very good head of government and head of state and head of government. Now that we're done with let's talk about a bit about the laws here. We'll have to play a bit with these laws if we want to be ready for the war. Right now we have available mixed industry, definitely a worthy tech, but we don't have money for it, and specialist training. Actually, that's a very bad tech for National China right now, because it increases the time needed to build units. So we'll stay away from it, at least in the beginning. And that's the only text that we can improve right now, but the only one that I will improve as soon as possible will be mixed industry. So let's talk a bit about technology. Our research will have to be extremely focused, because we don't have many leadership. So of course I will be before I do this, let me talk about my strategy for the army. Some players advocate, defend, say that the best for National China is the militia strategy. Instead of building standard infantry, some players say that it's much better to simply throw huge amounts of militia to hold the lines. Once they deplete their organization, we'll send our second line to reinforce the front line, and so on. huge amounts of militia. Um, but I want to get this over with as soon as possible. So militia, although even though I consider it a very valid strategy, in fact there is a forum member of Paradox forum where I hang out a lot. I'm talking about the mouse master. He has a very good tutorial about that particular strategy. Anyone wanting to learn how to stop the Japanese with militia should in fact read this tutorial. I'm actually implementing several of his tips in this let's play, but I'm going to choose different strategy in terms of divisions. So because I'm going to do different builds, I'm also going to research a bit differently. So I will focus on all infantry techs. I'm also forced to research infantry anti-tanks, but that won't have a priority right now because we won't be facing tanks. It will eventually go to the bottom of the queue, but I will have to research it. The reason for it is because I need marines. So we're done with the infantry. I will probably, as time goes, I will probably research militia support weapons and militia small arms too, because I will be relying on militia to defend the ports. And as you can see, National China has a huge amount of ports. After taking the warlords, it will have an even greater amount of ports. They need to be defended, so militia is good for that. Our time is almost up, it's a shame. I would want to keep playing. Maybe I'll do that a few minutes more. Another text that I'm going to research are the artillery. This will be very, very important. I will try to research at least. This is not a priority. This is absolutely not a priority for now, but we will have to build some kind of a navy to defy the Japanese. So it's a good idea to build light cruisers, improve light cruiser main armament and light cruiser engine, but this is not a priority. It will go to the bottom of the queue, so I won't pick it right now. I'll come back later for it. We'll ignore all fighter techs for now. Here's our next priority. I want to have top-notch industrial efficiency and production. I also want to increase production because I want to be able to build infrastructure as soon as possible. So I need 3 levels of industrial production and industrial efficiency to be able to produce, to build infrastructure. Why is that so important? Because that will help us solve one of the biggest problems that National China has. It's dreadful infrastructure. This makes, like I said, supplying troops very hard, very difficult, but also the movement in this huge country will be delayed a lot. So infrastructure is indeed a priority, because no one can defend the country if it takes forever to reach from one point to the other. So it's very hard to run a country like that. So we need infrastructure. Well, so that's the reason why I'm going to waste leadership in the industrial production, because 2.5% of 61, when we need when we need officers so badly, and we need to research lots of other things, but I really need to improve the infrastructure. Also, improving infrastructure will raise our practical of construction practical, that in turn will, when we have construction engineering, when we'll be able to construct IC, will become much cheaper. Another thing this brought to my attention is that National China has pretty dreadful practicals in almost everything, with the exception of militia and militia theory, militia practical, and infantry practical, and infantry theory. Even artillery is quite bad, but since we are going to build a lot of them, this will rise. In this screen I will also bother to research supply production, and in time probably these are not priorities for now, but they will be useful in the future. But we have more urgent matters to deal with. These will also be very useful because it will improve the research. This will allow us to research census tabulation machine, which will increase research efficiency by 2%, and in turn will allow to research very useful text that will speed research, and also will allow us to research radios, which increases the combat efficiency of our divisions by 10%. I won't even bother with secret. Another tech that is absolutely mandatory is supply organization. I would say that this one is also very important. This one is not as important, but I'm going to research it also. Over here I will give priority to mass assault, because this increases the speed at which our infantry divisions regain organization, and also assault concentration, because it increases the organization of our artillery, and we, believe me, are going to build lots of artillery. Operation level organization is all mandatory. After these three techs are researched, our next priority will be infantry warfare, because it increases the infantry organization by 10. Most of these texts will have to be researched, but they are not a priority. Same thing here. So we have currently 17 projects to research, and no research, and not enough leadership to do it, but they are already prioritized. The ones that I consider much more important, one of them is education, industrial efficiency, supply production will go to the bottom of the queue. Okay, now that we've talked about the technology, we will also want to build armor, so I'm going to research the light tank brigade. I'm going to put infantry anti-tank weapons at the bottom of the queue. and these two also to the bottom of the queue. Okay, not that we have deal with technology, it's time to think about production. So my main build will be, I might as well make a template right now, will be infantry, 2 infantry and 2 artillery. I will explain it better why I'm going to do this in the next episode. For now I'm just going to build a few divisions in reserve. This is good for our because it won't reserves, built-in reserves not only require less IC, but also won't increase consumer goods. Here it is, and I'm going to put the light cruiser to the bottom of the queue. That's all for production right now. We don't have much IC, so we'll only have to deal with diplomacy before we start the clock, just like in the Finnish Let's Play. I will try to sell fuel to the US, but they won't accept it right now, maybe on day 2. So like I said before, I'm going to align to the Soviet Union, because if I want to backstab them in the future, it's better that they think I'm their friends. So that's pretty much how this works. We align to the Soviet Union. You will know that we will have a lot of trouble with the Axis. As you can see, Japan will be able to join when it drops, when the neutrality drops. We are still far from the Axis. Chances are that Japan will join them sooner. Not exactly, but the chances are high. But since we want to remain neutral, I want to remain neutral. There's no point in aligning to the Axis, because that will increase the threats towards Soviet Union when we declare war to someone, and it's best that they think we are their friends. I won't automate trades because, like I said moments ago, I won't be wasting. Wasting is not really the term. It's because it's not wasting leadership to research these techs. It's just that right now I don't have enough leadership for that. So I will increase my stockpiles by doing business with the US. So, like I was saying, to solve Nationalist China problems with resources, I will trade heavily with the US. I was almost forgetting, National China also has an air force, but they are pretty obsolete planes. National China starts with 1 interceptor, level 1 interceptor, and level 1 tactical bomber. Like I said, they are both obsolete. Despite the Air Force being obsolete, we also have an obsolete Navy, but we have 10 warships and 1 transport, so I think that the Navy is pretty decent. We have 10 screens and 1 transport. Before I end this episode, I would like to talk about the differences between very hard difficulty, and normal. As we can see, we have a minus 25% of IC handicap. Along with that handicap, we have a minus 25% of every resource, and our divisions will fight 40% worse. They will have a minus 40% efficiency in all battles, including air and sea battles. So that's pretty bad. But what I consider most difficult to overcome is the minus 50% supply through output. As you can see, in a level 3 province, at current technological levels, we can only transport 43.2 supplies and fuel per day, and this is in one of our provinces, because on top of these already very bad and supply minus 50% supply through output, when we capture an enemy province, that supply through output will be cut in half. So in an enemy level 3 provinces like this one, we will only be able to supply our troops each day with half of these 43.2. In other words, we can only carry 21.6 supplies and fuel per day. But that is if the infrastructure is not damaged, which usually does not happen after a battle. After a battle, usually the infrastructure is damaged, so it will end up with pretty low supply through output in enemy territory. Besides the supply through output handicaps, minus 50% for very hard, along with minus 50% in occupied provinces, that stacks with the very hard supply through output handicap. All ports will also deliver and receive, in this case receive, a minus 50% efficiency. So if you want to supply our troops overseas, or maybe to run a convoy from one of these ports to the front lines, our ports will be operating at minus 50% efficiency. While we have all these handicaps, the AI will be boosted. We'll receive very big boosts. The IC of all our AI opponents will be doubled, the resources will be doubled, and they will receive increased supply through output of 50% in both infrastructure and through ports. So these are pretty big handicaps. So guys, I think it's all for today. But before I end this episode, I would like to say that if you have any doubts or any questions, please feel free to ask them. If you want me to include some more information in the next episodes. By the way, in the next episodes I will talk a bit more about strategy. This was just an overall the overall picture, but we still have a lot to talk about strategy. So I hope you have enjoyed this extra long episode, and as always, take care, and I hope to see you soon.